The crash and the cry the sky burned red as the human ship tore through the clouds. Captain Ryan held the controls tight, alarms screaming all around him. Metal shook, fire burst from the engine, and the ship spun down toward the dark planet below. He shouted for control, but gravity had already won. The crash came with thunder and light, then silence followed. Only the sound of his breathing filled the wreck. Smoke rose like ghosts from the broken ship. Ryan opened his eyes, blood on his face. Helmet cracked, oxygen low. His vision flickered, and the ship's systems showed nothing but static. He tried to call the command ship, but the comms were dead. Outside, the strange purple sky glowed with storm clouds and two moons. He stepped out of the wreckage, holding his rifle, scanning the forest that waited like a dark ocean. He didn't know where he was, only that he was alive for now. Something moved in the shadows. He turned fast, finger on trigger. But it was not a soldier. Not a beast, it was a small figure, thin and trembling. A little girl with silver skin and bright blue eyes that seemed to shine in the dark. She looked no older than 7. Her hands shook as she stared at him, then she screamed, her voice sharp and echoing through the forest. "Dad, I want him to be my brother," she cried, pointing at Ryan. The words hit him like a bullet. He froze, confused, not sure if he heard right. How could she speak English? And what did she mean before he could move? Loud footsteps came from the trees. Voices shouted in a language he didn't know, rough and angry. The girl gasped and ran toward Ryan. Grabbing his arm, "Please," she whispered. "They will take me." Ryan's soldier mind took control. He pulled her behind a rock, scanning the tree line. Strange armored figures appeared, tall and insect-like, carrying bright blue weapons. They searched the wreckage, their eyes glowing like fire. Ryan held his breath, holding the girl close. She trembled against him, and he could feel her tiny heartbeat. When one of the aliens turned toward them, Ryan fired, the shot echoed, one fell, and chaos began. Bolts of light cut through the night. Burning trees and metal, Ryan lifted the girl and ran, jumping over fallen branches. The forest roared with light and thunder as the aliens followed. His lungs burned, his body ached. But he didn't stop. The girl cried into his shoulder, whispering something in her own tongue. It sounded like a prayer. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the fear after what felt like forever. He found a cave hidden behind a curtain of vines. He slipped inside, gun ready, heart pounding. The girl clung to him, tears on her silver cheeks. Outside, the hunter shouted. Their steps moving closer, Ryan aimed at the entrance, waiting. But after a long moment, the voices faded into the storm. Only the rain and thunder remained. He finally sat down, breathing hard. The girl looked at him, her eyes wide. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. Ryan looked at her. This small alien child with fear and hope in her eyes, he didn't know the answer. Maybe it was because she called him Dad. Maybe it was because no one should be left alone. He sighed, his voice calm but tired. "You're safe now," he said. Though he wasn't sure it was true. Outside, lightning flashed across the alien sky, and deep inside the cave, a strange glowing symbol pulsed on the wall behind them. Unseen. Something ancient had awakened. And neither the human nor the little alien girl knew that their meeting had just changed the future of two worlds. The stranger and the child rain fell outside the cave, soft at first, then heavy like drums. Captain Ryan sat near the wall, checking his broken wrist device. No signal, no power, no hope of rescue yet. The little alien girl sat beside him, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the fire he made. The orange light danced across her silver skin. Making her look almost human, Ryan watched her carefully, wondering who she was and why she was alone. She pointed at the fire and smiled a little. "Warm," she said slowly, her voice shy and soft. Ryan nodded, surprised she knew the word. "You speak English?" he asked. She tilted her head, thinking for a moment. "Some," she answered, touching her chest. "Lyra." He understood her name was Lyra. He pointed to himself. "Ryan," she repeated it quietly. "Rye," and like she was learning how to breathe his name. For a long time they sat in silence. Outside, the forest glowed with lightning and strange sounds. Every time thunder came, Lyra flinched, clutching her small hands. Ryan wanted to tell her it was okay, but he didn't know how, so he took out a small emergency ration bar and broke it in half. He gave one piece to her. She smelled it first, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened in surprise, then she smiled. Ryan chuckled quietly. "Not bad, huh?" She didn't understand the words, but she laughed too. Hours passed and the fire grew low. Lyra began to hum a soft melody, almost like a lullaby. Ryan closed his eyes, listening. There was something ancient and sad in her song. It made him feel like she carried the memories of a lost world. When she stopped, she looked at him and whispered, "They come for me." Ryan's eyes opened. Sharp and alert. "Who comes?" he asked. She looked toward the cave mouth, eyes full of fear. "Hunters." He grabbed his rifle. Moving to the edge of the cave, through the rain, he saw shadows moving on, slow and careful. The same aliens who had searched the wreck. He cursed under his breath. The girl was right, they were tracking her. Ryan turned back, whispering, "Stay quiet." Lyra nodded, pressing herself against the wall. He waited as the shadows came closer, counting his ammo. 3 bullets left, that was all. But the hunters did not come inside. Instead, they placed something near the cave. Small glowing orbs. Ryan didn't recognize them until one beeped. "Scanners," he muttered. They were trying to detect life signs. He aimed carefully and shot the first orb. The light died. The sound echoed through the forest. The hunters shouted in their strange tongue and fired back. Bolts of blue light hit the rocks, showering sparks everywhere. Lyra cried out, covering her ears. Ryan grabbed her and rolled deeper into the cave. The roof cracked, dust fell from above, then suddenly, silence. He waited, holding his breath. The hunters didn't follow, maybe thinking the cave had collapsed. Ryan listened for minutes before lowering his weapon. They were safe again for now. Lyra touched his arm gently. Her eyes filled with tears. "You saved me," she whispered. Ryan nodded. "I had to." She shook her head, confused. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at her, small, fragile, yet brave enough to face death. "Because," he said slowly, "no child should die alone." She blinked, not understanding all the words, but she smiled, and in that smile, there was trust as she fell asleep near the fire. Ryan looked around the cave on the far wall. He noticed the strange glowing symbol again. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat. He touched it, and for a moment, light flashed across the walls, showing shapes of humans and other beings standing together. Then it faded, leaving him in silence. Ryan stepped back, eyes wide. "What is this place?" he whispered. Outside, the storm ended. The moons shone above and deep in the darkness. Something ancient seemed to watch them both, the human and the little alien girl, 2 strangers bound by fate. The hunters' arrive morning came slow on the strange planet. The light from the twin moons faded, replaced by a dull red sunrise. Captain Ryan sat at the cave's mouth, watching the fog move like ghosts between the trees. He hadn't slept much. His rifle rested across his knees. Inside, Lyra still slept, her small hands curled like a child dreaming of safety. But Ryan knew safety was a word that didn't exist out here. He checked the power cell of his weapon, only 1 charge left. His knife was sharp but useless against energy rifles. He looked at his broken wrist device again, still no signal. Maybe the crash had knocked him too far from human space. He sighed, then looked back at Lyra. She was all he had now, and somehow that meant everything. Suddenly, a sound came from the forest, low and metallic. He froze, listening. It was the hum of a ship, small, fast, and close. The hunters were back. Ryan quickly moved to Lyra and shook her shoulder. "Lyra, wake up," he whispered. Her eyes opened slowly, then widened with fear. "They found us," she said, trembling. Ryan nodded. "Stay behind me." He moved to the cave's entrance, crouching low through the mist. He saw dark figures stepping out of the trees, tall, insect-like aliens wearing bone-white armor that glowed faintly blue. They carried long rifles that hissed with energy. One of them raised a scanner and began to move closer. Ryan's heartbeat pounded like drums in his chest. He aimed carefully, holding his breath. He waited until one hunter came near the rocks, then he fired. The bolt hit clean. The alien fell, smoke rising from the wound. Before the others could react, Ryan grabbed Lyra and pulled her deeper into the cave. The sound of alien shouts filled the air, followed by bursts of blue light. Rocks shattered, dust filled the air, and the cave trembled. "Run!" Ryan shouted. Grabbing Lyra's hand, they ran through a narrow tunnel at the back. The passage was dark, twisting like a serpent. Lyra stumbled, but Ryan caught her, pushing her forward behind them. Light from the hunters' weapons flashed. Each blast echoed like thunder. Ryan fired back once, but his weapon clicked empty, out of power, out of luck. Finally, they reached the other side of the tunnel. It opened into a wide valley filled with strange plants glowing in shades of blue and green. The air smelled clean but heavy with mist. Ryan looked back, the cave entrance behind them smoking. "They will follow," Lyra whispered. Ryan nodded, scanning the valley for a place to hide. In the distance he saw a tall stone tower, broken at the top but still standing. "Over there," he said, pulling her along. They ran across the soft ground, their feet splashing through shallow pools. Every sound seemed too loud, every shadow too alive. When they reached the tower, Ryan pushed open a fallen slab and they slipped inside. It was cold and silent. Carvings covered the walls, symbols of stars, planets and beings with both human and alien faces. Lyra looked around in awe. "Makers," she whispered. Ryan turned to her. "What did you say?" "The Makers built everything," she said softly. "Long before our war," Ryan frowned, touching one of the carvings. It showed a human hand holding an alien one. Something about it felt right, like a memory he couldn't reach before he could ask more. A shadow passed across the doorway. Lyra gasped. Ryan raised his knife, ready to fight, but then a wounded alien soldier stumbled in. The one he thought he had killed. Its armor cracked, its eyes dim. It looked at them, breathing hard, and spoke in broken English. "The girl, she is not what you think," it said. Before collapsing, Ryan and Lyra stared at each other, hearts pounding. Outside, the sound of more hunters grew louder, echoing through the mist, and in that moment, Ryan knew this was only the beginning of something far greater than survival. Secrets in the shadows. The tower was quiet, but the air felt heavy. Dust floated in beams of pale blue light coming through the cracks in the stone. Ryan knelt beside the fallen alien soldier, his breath slow and cautious. The creature's skin was pale gray, its armor cracked open, revealing black blood that shimmered like oil. Its last words still echoed in Ryan's mind. "The girl, she is not what you think." Lyra stood near the wall, staring at the carvings. Her small hands traced the glowing lines that moved under her touch. The symbols pulsed like they were alive. Reacting to her presence, Ryan felt his heart race. A strange hum filled the air. He turned to her. "Lyra, stop." "What are you doing?" She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly blue. "I don't know," she whispered. "It listens to me." Suddenly, the wall shifted. Stone grinding against stone, a hidden door slid open, revealing a spiral staircase going down into darkness. Ryan raised his weapon out of habit. Though it was out of power, the hum grew louder. Vibrating through the floor, Lyra took a step forward. "They want us to go," she said softly. Ryan frowned. "Who's they?" "The Makers," she answered, her voice trembling but sure. He didn't know if she was right, but he had no other path left. The hunters would soon find the tower. He nodded once. "Stay close to me." They descended the stairs, each step echoing like a heartbeat. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The air smelled old, untouched for centuries. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a wide chamber. It was filled with strange machines covered in dust and vines. The floor glowed faintly with blue lines that connected to a giant crystal in the center. Lyra walked toward it slowly. As if drawn by something she couldn't resist, Ryan followed, his boots crunching over broken pieces of metal. When she touched the crystal, light exploded across the room. Images filled the air like holograms. Ryan saw stars, ships, and ancient beings, tall, radiant, neither human nor alien. They were the Makers. He saw them guiding different species, teaching them, building worlds. Then a great war appeared in the vision. Fire across galaxies, the Makers vanished, leaving chaos behind. Humans and aliens turned against each other, forgetting their shared past. The light faded, leaving Ryan and Lyra standing in silence. Lyra looked at him, tears in her eyes. "They made us both," she whispered. Ryan's mind spun, trying to make sense of it. "Are you saying humans and your people came from the same source?" She nodded. "Yes, but they forgot and we fought because of that." Her voice shook. "They fear me because I can remember." Ryan stepped closer, his voice soft. "That's why they want you dead." She nodded again, her small shoulders trembling. "I can wake the Maker's memory," she said. "Well, but if I do, the others will come." Before Ryan could ask what she meant, a loud crash shook the tower. Dust rained down from above, and distant voices shouted in the alien language. The hunters had arrived. Ryan grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her toward the back of the chamber. "Is there another way out?" he asked. Lyra looked around, her eyes glowing again. The lines on the floor flared brighter, forming a path toward a narrow tunnel. "This way," she said, and they ran behind them. The chamber filled with blue fire as the hunters stormed in. Energy bolts hit the crystal, shattering it into 1,000 shards of light. They escaped into the tunnel, breathing hard. The ground shook, the tower collapsing behind them. When they finally reached the surface, the night sky was filled with smoke and stars. Ryan looked down at Lyra, her eyes shining like twin moons. He didn't know what she truly was. But one thing was certain now: she wasn't just a lost child. She was the key to something ancient, something that could change the fate of every living world. The chase through the storm thunder rolled across the red sky as Ryan and Lyra ran through the open valley. The air smelled like metal and rain, the ground shaking under each thunderclap. Behind them, the tower had become a burning shadow. Collapsing in fire and dust, Lyra stumbled. But Ryan caught her arm and pulled her up. "Keep moving," he said, his voice rough but calm. Lightning flashed, showing the outlines of alien hunters chasing through the mist. They ran between tall black trees that glowed faintly blue under the stormlight. The rain came harder, sharp and cold against their faces. Ryan's boots splashed through mud, his lungs burning with each breath. The sound of alien engines roared closer. He looked back and saw flying drones, small, fast with bright red eyes scanning the ground. "We can't outrun them," he muttered. Lyra looked up at him, her voice small. "Then we hide." They dove behind a fallen tree. Soaked and shaking, Ryan pulled out his last flare grenade, holding it tight. "If they spot us, I'll throw this," he whispered. Lyra nodded, her blue eyes wide with fear. The drones hovered closer, their lights cutting through the rain. One of them stopped right above their heads. Ryan held his breath. The drone beeped once, aiming its scanner downward. Before Ryan could move, Lyra reached out her hand. Her palm glowed softly, the light spreading across her fingers like fire. The drone froze, its lights flickering. Then, with a soft crackling sound, it fell to the ground. Dead. Ryan stared, his mouth slightly open. What did you do?" he asked. Lyra looked at her hand, surprised herself. "I don't know," she whispered. "It just happened." More drones appeared, their red lights searching wildly. Ryan grabbed Lyra and ran again. The storm grew worse, rain hitting like bullets, wind screaming through the forest ahead. He saw a ridge of rocks, high ground, maybe safety. He climbed, pulling Lyra behind him. Lightning struck nearby, lighting the world in white for one brief moment. When the flash faded, Ryan saw something ahead, an old metallic structure half buried in the ground. It looked like part of a crashed alien ship, ancient and broken. "Inside," he said, and they crawled through a hole in the side. The ship's interior smelled of dust and rust. Faint blue light still flickered along the walls. Lyra touched one of the panels and it came alive. Glowing with strange symbols, Ryan looked around, realizing the place was older than any human design. "This is a maker ship," Lyra said quietly. Ryan nodded, remembering the carvings from the tower. "Can you use it?" he asked. "I think it wants to help us," she whispered. The walls pulsed brighter and a low hum filled the air. Outside, the sound of the hunters grew louder. They were closing in. Ryan took position near the entrance, knife ready, though he knew it wasn't enough. Then the ship began to shake, lights running across the floor like streams of energy. Lyra stood in the center, her eyes glowing brighter than before. A beam of light surrounded her, and for a second she looked almost weightless. "Lyra!" Ryan shouted, but she didn't answer. Her voice echoed softly, layered with something ancient. "They come for us." But the makers watched still. The hunters reached the ridge, shouting as they fired into the ship. Energy bolts struck the metal, sparks flying everywhere. Ryan grabbed Lyra, pulling her back as part of the wall exploded. The storm raged harder, lightning striking the trees outside. He saw his chance and threw the flare grenade. It exploded in a burst of white fire, blinding the hunters for a moment. "Run!" he yelled, and they bolted through the other side of the ship. The wind howled like a living thing as they disappeared into the night. Behind them, the alien ship began to sink deeper into the earth. Glowing brighter, the storm swallowed its light, thunder roaring across the sky. Ryan and Lyra collapsed under a rock ledge. Breathing hard, she looked at him with tired eyes. "You saved me again," she whispered. Ryan shook his head. "No, kid. This time you saved both of us, above them." The storm started to fade, and through the clouds, the stars appeared again, but far in the distance. A faint signal light blinked in the sky. A human ship was approaching the planet. And Ryan knew their story was about to take a darker turn. Between two worlds, the storm was gone, but the sky still glowed red from distant lightning. Ryan sat beside the dying campfire, staring at the stars through the smoke. Lyra slept close to him, wrapped in his jacket, her silver skin shining faintly in the dark. He could hear her soft breathing, calm and steady for a moment. It almost felt peaceful. But in his heart, Ryan knew peace never lasted long. He turned on his broken wrist device again, trying to send a weak signal. Static filled the screen. Then a voice cracked through. "Captain Ryan, respond." "This is the Atlas Command." Ryan froze, his pulse quickening. It was a human voice, clear and sharp. He pressed the button fast. "This is Ryan, I'm alive, I repeat." "I'm alive," the voice answered. "We've tracked your beacon, hold position. Extraction in 1 hour." Relief washed over him. But then he looked at Lyra. She stirred in her sleep. Unaware of what he had just heard, he whispered to himself, 1 hour, and everything changes. When she woke, she smiled sleepily. "Morning." Ryan forced a small smile. "Morning, kid." She looked at the sky, her face brightening. "You found your people." Ryan hesitated. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They're coming." Her smile faded, replaced by fear. "They will hurt me," she whispered. "They hate us." He wanted to tell her she was wrong, but deep down he couldn't lie. Humans had fought her kind for decades. They called them monsters. Enemies, things to be destroyed. If Command saw Lyra, they would never believe she was just a child. Ryan's chest tightened, a war growing inside his mind. He had survived battles before, but this fight was different. This one was about who he really was. Lyra walked closer, touching his arm gently. "Ryan," she said softly, "you don't have to stay." He looked at her, confused. "You can go back to your people," she said. "I'll hide." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. Ryan shook his head. "No, I'm not leaving you." She looked up, eyes shining with tears. "But they'll kill you if you protect me." He smiled sadly. "Then they'll have to try." Minutes passed in silence. The wind carried the distant hum of engines. The rescue ship was near. Ryan stood watching the sky. A bright light appeared, cutting through the clouds, descending fast. He felt the familiar vibration under his boots. The sound of human engines. "Lyra, we need to move," he said. Grabbing his pack, she didn't move, just stared at the light, her face full of dread. "They will burn this world," she whispered. Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the sky. "They come with fire." Before he could reply, the ship's voice boomed through the air. "Captain Ryan, stand by for extraction. Preparing to neutralize hostiles in your area." Ryan's heart sank. Neutralize hostiles? They were planning to bomb the valley. He shouted into his device. "Negative. There are no hostiles, I repeat, no hostiles." But Command didn't answer. The ship began to charge its weapons. The sky flashing bright white. Ryan turned to Lyra. "We have to stop them." She nodded, eyes glowing faintly. He ran toward a ridge with a clear view of the sky. Lyra followed, holding his hand tightly. "Can you reach them?" he asked. She closed her eyes, whispering words in her strange language. The air shimmered around her like light bending through water. Then the ship above hesitated, its engines flickering. Ryan watched in awe as her glow grew stronger. She's connecting to their systems, he realized. The sky hummed, and for a brief moment, the bombing sequence stopped. Lyra fell to her knees. Exhausted, Ryan caught her, holding her close. "You did it," he whispered. But she shook her head weakly. "No, they will come again." More ships. He looked out at the horizon, where more lights were already forming, between the stars and the storm. He stood, a human torn between two worlds. He knew he couldn't save both sides, but he could save her, and that would have to be enough. Betrayal and truth. The rescue ship landed in a storm of dust and wind. Ryan shielded Lyra with his arm as the engines roared above them. The silver hull gleamed under the fading light. It looked like hope, but Ryan's heart felt only fear. He knew what waited inside: orders, questions, and judgment. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Stay close to me." No matter what, soldiers in gray armor stepped out, rifles ready. Their visors hid their faces, but Ryan recognized their movements. These were his people, his brothers in war. One of them walked forward, tall, strict, the commander's mark on his chest. "Captain Ryan Hale," the man said through his helmet. "You're alive." Ryan lowered his weapon slightly. "Yes." "Sir?" The man removed his helmet. It was Commander Briggs, His old mentor, lines of age and war cut deep across his face. But his eyes were still sharp, cold as steel. Briggs looked around. "Scanning the valley, report," he ordered. Ryan hesitated. "Crash landing, enemy contact?" "But no hostiles remain," Briggs nodded slowly. "And the girl?" Ryan froze, his voice quiet. "She's with me," Briggs frowned. Stepping closer. "With you?" Ryan nodded again. "She's a child, sir. She needed help." Briggs's eyes narrowed. "She's not a child, Captain. She's the enemy." Lyra stood half-hidden behind Ryan, trembling. Her bright blue eyes reflected the soldiers' weapons. "I told you to stay back," Ryan whispered, but she shook her head. "I'm not afraid," Briggs turned his gaze on her. "So, this is the creature that caused the signal interference," he said. Lyra didn't speak. She just stared at him, silent but defiant. Briggs lifted his wrist device and spoke into it. "Command, target located. Authorization for termination." Ryan's eyes widened. "What did you say?" "Orders from High Command," Briggs said calmly. "That species killed thousands of our people. She's a weapon, not a child." Ryan stepped forward, blocking her with his body. "Stand down, sir." "You're wrong." Briggs's face hardened. "Step aside, Captain." "That's an order." The soldiers raised their guns. The hum of energy filled the air. Lyra grabbed Ryan's hand, fear trembling in her voice. "Ryan, they want to kill me." "I won't let them," he said, his voice steady but burning with anger. Briggs took a step closer, his tone colder now. "You're disobeying direct orders." "Captain?" Ryan met his eyes. "If the order is to kill a child, then yes, I am." For a moment no one moved. Only the sound of wind and distant thunder filled the silence. Then Briggs sighed almost sadly. "You always let your heart cloud your duty," he said. He raised his hand. "Arrest him." Two soldiers stepped forward. But before they could reach him, Lyra screamed. A burst of blue light exploded from her. Throwing everyone back, the air shook, the ground cracked. The soldiers hit the dirt, weapons sparking. Ryan turned to her, shocked. Lyra stood glowing, tears running down her face. "I don't want to hurt them," she cried. "But they keep hurting us." Briggs struggled to his feet, shouting, "See? She's dangerous." Ryan knelt beside her, his voice soft. "Lyra, listen to me, stop." "It's okay." She looked at him, shaking. "They'll never stop." "Ryan," Briggs aimed his pistol, his hands trembling. Ryan saw it and moved without thinking. He pushed Lyra aside as the shot fired. The blast hit Ryan's shoulder, burning pain spreading through him. He fell to one knee, gasping. Lyra screamed, her glow flaring brighter. The energy around her pulsed like lightning. The soldiers backed away, terrified. Ryan forced his voice through the pain. "Lyra, don't let them make you a monster." Her glow softened, her tears falling fast. Briggs lowered his weapon slowly, staring in disbelief. The light faded until only the rain remained. Ryan looked up at Briggs, weak but steady. "She's not our enemy, sir. She's proof we've been wrong." Briggs didn't answer, his face pale, his eyes full of something Ryan hadn't seen in years. Doubt in that storm of betrayal and truth. Humanity had taken its first small step toward seeing itself. The great escape rain fell harder as chaos filled the valley. Smoke and blue fire covered the ground where the soldiers had fallen. Ryan pressed his hand to his bleeding shoulder. His breath rough and shallow, Lyra knelt beside him, her small hands glowing softly as she tried to heal him. A warm light spread through his skin. Easing the pain, he looked at her in disbelief. "How are you doing that?" She shook her head. "I don't know. It just listens to me." Commander Briggs stood a few meters away. Soaked and silent, his gun hung useless at his side. The soldiers around him were waking slowly, groaning, confused by what had just happened. Ryan pushed himself up, weak but standing. "This has to end." "Sir," he said, voice steady. "She's not what they told us." Briggs didn't answer, his eyes flicking between Ryan and the girl. "She's powerful," he muttered. "Too powerful." Ryan took a step forward. "Then help me protect her." A distant rumble interrupted them. From above, the rescue ship powered up again, its engines glowing bright. Briggs looked at his wrist display and froze. "They've locked onto us," he said. "Command thinks we're compromised." Ryan's heart sank. "They're going to fire." He turned to Lyra. "We have to move." Now, the ship's energy cannons charged, lighting up the night sky. The ground trembled as Ryan grabbed Lyra's hand and ran. "Sir, stop!" one soldier shouted, but Ryan ignored him. They sprinted through the tall grass as the first blast hit. A wall of fire erupted behind them, throwing dirt and metal into the air. Lyra screamed as Ryan shielded her with his body. Heat washed over them, burning, choking, endless. Then another blast struck the old ruins nearby. The tower from the Maker's temple exploded, sending shards of glowing stone everywhere. Briggs shouted orders through the smoke. "Everyone retreat!" "Fall back!" Ryan turned toward the ruins, half buried but still glowing faintly. He could feel a pull, like the ground itself was calling them. "Lyra, this way," he said, and they ran toward the light behind them. Soldiers scattered as more fire rained from the ship. The planet itself seemed to scream. The ground cracked open, revealing a deep tunnel glowing with the same blue light as before. Without thinking, Ryan jumped in, holding Lyra tight. They fell for seconds that felt like hours. Before landing hard on a metallic floor, the tunnel stretched endlessly, its walls covered with glowing veins of light. Lyra stood, looking around in wonder. "This is the heart of the Makers," she whispered. Ryan looked back up at the hole above them. He could still hear explosions, but now they were far away. For the moment, they were safe. As they walked deeper, the air grew warmer. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber, filled with floating machines. They looked alive, pulsing gently like they were breathing. Lyra reached out, and one floated toward her. It projected a beam of light showing images and humans. Aliens and Makers together. Ryan watched, his eyes wide. "It's like history," he said softly. Lyra nodded. They wanted peace, not war. A deep hum filled the room, and a large shape appeared in the light. A glowing construct, neither human nor alien, but something between. It spoke in a calm, echoing voice. "Child of two worlds, your time has come." Lyra stepped closer. Frightened but curious, Ryan grabbed her shoulder. "What does it mean?" the voice continued. "You carry the memory of unity. Protect it, or all will burn." The chamber began to shake, lights flashing rapidly above them. The ceiling started to collapse. Ryan shouted, "We have to go!" He pulled Lyra toward a side passage as the floor cracked. The ancient machines fell apart. One by one, fire and dust filled the tunnel. But they kept running. When they finally reached the surface again, the sky was on fire, the human ship was gone, and the valley lay in ruins. Lyra stood beside him, tears in her glowing eyes. "They tried to destroy us," she whispered. Ryan looked at her, his face hard but calm. "They failed," he said, "and now we find the truth." The choice the valley was silent after the storm of fire. Ash floated in the air like snow, falling over broken machines and burned earth. Ryan stood on a hill, breathing hard. His uniform torn and stained with dust, Lyra sat beside him, her silver skin dim under the pale morning light. The world around them was quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes after the end of something big. Ryan looked up at the sky, where black smoke twisted into the clouds high above. He could see the faint shimmer of ships moving in orbit. More human fleets had arrived, he could tell by their formation. "They'll finish the job," he muttered. Lyra turned to him, her voice small. "They'll kill everyone." Ryan nodded slowly. "If we don't stop them, yes." Lyra stared at her glowing hands, confusion and sadness in her eyes. "The Makers told me I have something inside," she said softly. "A light that connects everything." Ryan remembered the voice from the underground chamber. The memory of unity. That's what it had called her gift. He looked at her seriously. "Can you use it?" She shook her head. "I don't know how. It feels like it's sleeping." Ryan stepped closer, his tone calm but firm. "Then maybe it's time to wake it up." They moved toward the ruins where the tower once stood. In the center, a large crystal shard still pulsed faintly with blue light. Lyra touched it and it flickered. Reacting to her energy, the ground trembled, and symbols began to glow across the broken stone. Ryan stepped back, shielding his eyes from the brightness. The light spread across the valley like ripples in water. In the sky above, the human ship suddenly paused. Their weapons charged, but something stopped them from one of the ships. A deep voice echoed through Ryan's comm link. "Captain Ryan, this is Admiral Torres. Explain that energy surge." Ryan pressed the device, his voice steady. "Admiral, it's not a weapon. It's proof." "Proof of what?" the Admiral demanded. "That we're not enemies," Ryan said, looking at Lyra. "She's not a threat. She's a bridge between our worlds." Static filled the air for a moment. Then another voice spoke, colder, higher ranking. "Captain, your orders were clear. Destroy all alien activity. Or we'll do it from orbit. Ryan's jaw tightened, his heart pounding. He looked at Lyra, who stood surrounded by blue light, her eyes glowing bright. You have to choose, she said softly. Them or me. Ryan felt the weight of the universe pressing on his shoulders. He whispered, no, there has to be another way. Lyra closed her eyes, lifting her hands toward the sky. The light around her grew stronger, spreading upward like a beam of life. The ships above began to shake, their systems flickering. Every human screen filled with images, visions of the makers of both species standing together. It was the truth broadcast across the stars. Ryan watched in awe as Lyra's power filled the air. Her small voice echoed in his mind. They will see now. The human fleet stopped firing. Their weapons powered down, their engines silent. Ryan's comm crackled again. The Admiral's voice soft this time. Captain, what are we seeing? Ryan smiled faintly. The truth, sir, that she saved us all. The light began to fade, the valley glowing like dawn after darkness. Lyra fell to her knees, her glow fading with exhaustion. Ryan ran to her, catching her before she fell. You did it, he whispered, his voice breaking. She smiled weakly. Did we stop the war? Ryan looked at the sky, where no ships fired anymore. Yes, he said softly. You stopped it. He held her close as the morning light returned for the first time in years. The world felt alive again, but deep in his mind, Ryan knew the hardest part was yet to come. Now that peace had begun, he had to convince the world to believe in it. And as he looked at the little alien girl who had saved both sides, he realized this wasn't just her choice, it was humanity's too. The new dawn, the sun rose over the ruined valley. Golden light touched the burned stones and twisted metal. For the first time since the crash, the sky was calm. Ryan stood on the hilltop, his uniform torn, his face shadowed by the morning glow. Beside him, Lyra sat quietly, watching the clouds drift across the twin suns. Her silver skin shimmered in the light, her blue eyes soft but tired. The great battle was over. Human ships floated silently above the planet, no longer firing. Messages had already spread through every channel. The truth of the makers, the shared origin of both races, the vision Lyra had shown them all across the stars. Soldiers and leaders were questioning everything they believed, and it all began with one child and one human who refused to follow orders. Ryan looked at the sky and whispered, You did it, kid. Lyra smiled faintly. We did it. He chuckled softly, though pain still burned in his shoulder. Yeah, we did, he said, his voice heavy with relief. A distant sound reached them, engines, human shuttles descending from the sky. But this time there was no fear in the air. Only curiosity, only change. A group of soldiers approached slowly. Their weapons lowered, among them walked Commander Briggs. His armor scorched, his face pale. He stopped a few feet away, looking at Ryan. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Briggs finally said, You disobeyed orders. Captain, Ryan nodded. I know. Briggs's gaze shifted to Lyra, who stood beside Ryan. She's the reason we're still alive, Ryan added quietly. Briggs looked down, his voice softer than before. Maybe she is. Behind Briggs, a transmission played on a small screen. It showed the human admiral speaking to all fleets. Cease all fire, the admiral said, his voice clear and steady. We've witnessed something beyond our understanding. A truth buried for centuries. From this day, humanity will seek peace. Not dominance, the soldiers listened in silence. Ryan's heart felt lighter, but he still couldn't fully believe it. War never ends in a single morning, but hope had to start somewhere. Lyra turned toward Ryan, her expression thoughtful. What happens now, she asked. He smiled gently. No. We build something new, she looked confused. Build what? Ryan looked at the horizon, where the first rays of light touched the ruins. A home, he said simply, for both of us. Later that day, the shuttles landed peacefully. Scientists and medics came out curious but kind. They didn't see Lyra as a threat anymore. They saw her as a miracle. Ryan watched as she showed them the symbols left by the makers. Each mark glowing under her touch, it was a language of peace, one that no weapon could destroy at night. When the stars filled the sky again, Ryan sat near the fire. Lyra leaned against him, her head on his arm. Ryan, she whispered, what will they call me? He smiled softly. They'll call you what you are, the one who brought light, she giggled, her voice small and pure. And you, what will they call you? He looked up at the stars. The same stars that had once guided soldiers to war. Just a man who finally learned what it means to be human, he said. A gentle wind moved across the valley, carrying the scent of rain and new life in the distance. Human and alien lights shimmered together for the first time. No longer enemies, no longer strangers, but something greater. Survivors. Lyra looked at the sky and smiled. Dad, look. They're together now. Ryan turned to her, warmth in his eyes. Yeah, he said softly. And so are we. He placed his hand on her shoulder. Pulling her close, the last fires of war faded behind them, replaced by the light of a new dawn. And as the world began to heal, their story became legend, the story of a soldier and a little alien girl who changed the stars forever.